Welcome to the Christmas special of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast. I'm filmmaker Rich DiGregorio.
And I'm film watcher Greg Ralph, and ho ho ho.
Merry Christmas. So this episode we're going to talk about 3 Christmas-themed films. The first one we're going to talk about is Scrooged,
which is my Christmas film. And then we're going to go to your Christmas film,
Bad Santa,
and end up on everybody's Christmas film, which is
It's a Wonderful Life.
That didn't sound staged at all.
So, Greg, tell us about Scrooged.
Okay, so my Christmas film. This is not the Scrooge film you might be thinking of as a classic. This is Scrooged. And in this 1988 update of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Frank Cross, Bill Murray, is the TV network president who's finalising his Christmas broadcast schedule, crowned by a $40 million live broadcast of Dickens' classic. For this modern Scrooge, Christmas has no deeper meaning than a chance to boost ratings through fear and cynicism. Probably because Christmas had no real meaning in his childhood home. The rotting ghost of Frank's old boss, played by John Forsyth, comes to tell him that he's on the fast track to damnation, and in classic fashion, Frank is to be visited by 3 ghosts to remind him of the true spirit of Christmas, which is making mankind your business. Dickens' key characters are here, if a little transformed. The 3 Christmas ghosts, including a beautifully nutty and slightly dangerous turn by Carol Kane, and Frank's secretary, Alfie Woodard, as the Bob Cratchit figure, who is also the mother of the Tiny Tim character. And there are heaps of cameo performances by actors playing themselves in the network's different Christmas TV specials, beginning with Lee Majors saving Santa from terrorists. The film's beginning and end reflect Frank's own journey, from empty reuse of Christmas symbols to a heartfelt community sing-along that brings everyone together, even the ghosts. So, tread carefully, because I think as Yates said, you tread on my dreams. But, Ricardo, what did you think?
It's okay. All right. It's dated in its style quite a bit, which is sort of like in the era of Ghostbusters. Okay,
very much so,
right?
Yeah.
So, and it very much looks like that film. However, it's nowhere near as good as that film. I love A Christmas Carol. I love the story of Scrooge. I played Scrooge in a high school production. I love.
Oh, so this is professional jealousy.
Yeah, no. I really love the tale. So I really wanted to watch this movie, but Bill Murray is pretty average as the Scrooge character, I think, who pretty much underneath all his nastiness should have something extra there to make him at least, you feel something for him at the end. And I felt nothing for him at the very end. I thought it was okay.
Okay. I saw this when it came out at the movies. I went with my sister, and we both really enjoyed it. And it was one of those great examples of, you're in a cinema, you're with a group of strangers, you're watching a film, and you really get into it, and really enjoyed it. And I saw it back in 1988. I agree,
and I think it would have been fine back then. For its comedy.
That made me feel too old.
All right. But I think it would have been great back then, but I think the comedy has changed quite a bit, and I think it's dated in that way. I didn't find him funny at all.
I think he's interesting in the film, not so much as a character, but I think you're right in terms of his performance. I think he was at an interesting point in his career, from what I understand. He just had the huge success of Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters, as you say. He then made a very serious film, Razor's Edge, which had not been well received. And then the only thing he'd done in the 4 years after that was he'd made a cameo in Little Shop of Horrors, the musical, which I really quite like.
Richard Moranis?
And I think,
Moranis,
and this is all happening in a period of his films that I really like. And we've talked before about Billy Crystal. I can run a bit hot and cold on him, and I'm the same with Bill Murray. I might have a thing about Bills, I don't know. But, he's in this period where he's doing Ghostbusters, Little Shop of Horrors, Scrooge, which I like, but you don't, Ghostbusters 2, What About Bob, and then, of course, Groundhog Day, which I really like as well. Yes. We should talk about one day. But so he had this bad reception on the back of a really great reception of Ghostbusters. He's done this little cameo, but not really his film, in Little Shop of Horrors. And then, from what I understand, he turned up on set to do this, and he was edgy about getting back, to lead a film. And he seems to have been very difficult on set, and I think that shows through in his performance. He didn't get on well with the director, but the director did say afterwards that where Bill Murray really shone through and became an actor was in the final monologue, where he went, in front of the TV cameras and went off script.
Yeah.
Now, I actually find that part of the film the most mawkish part of it.
Me too.
I love the
agree.
sing-along, but not his speech beforehand.
I
And
agree.
it's not the deepest, most heartfelt, convincing conversion.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay, because that's not why I love it. What I love about it is it's a very intelligent reworking of A Christmas Carol. I love particularly the first two ghosts. I think they're fantastic, the taxi driver and the Nutty Fairy.
I think let's go back a little
Right.
bit actually here, right? I think it's a really interesting film for Richard Donner to direct. I really like Richard Donner. He did all the Lethal Weapons,
He made this break between two of the Lethal Weapon films.
Oh, there we go.
And he made Superman, and I'm a Superman fan.
Oh, Superman, he made Conspiracy Theory. He's made a lot of great... He made The Goonies, right? There's another one he made.
That's one of my confessions.
Oh, really? You've never seen The Goonies?
I've never seen The Goonies.
Oh, wow. That's another one. That's a great film.
Next year.
But it's a really interesting one for him to do, because essentially I know him as an action director.
Yep.
When Scrooge started, and it had that bit with Lee May.
It's quite disorienting. You're thinking, what film am I watching?
But it was so right as a Richard Donner film, but then it ends up being not that. But
Wouldn't you like to watch that Lee Majors special where he saves Santa?
Saves
I just
Santa.
thought, I'd so like to see this.
yeah. So in terms of, it was a really interesting film for him to direct anyway, and I don't think the direction was handled that well in the comedy aspect of it. And I think Bill Murray is forced in it.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's no emotional connection with that character at all. And I think you really should have
I disagree. I think there's one moment when he does. When the girlfriend, whose name escapes me, played by Karen Allen, first turns up after, the boss's ghost dials for him to bring her back into his life. And she responds and turns up next day in his studio. And he's just looking at her. And he looked at her, and I believe that moment. I really believe that he softened because she was there, and he really felt for her.
I still didn't feel like why she would actually want to be with him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And every time we see her, she's she hasn't moved on in her life that much. She's not married. She's looking at him as though they've just saw each other, yesterday.
Every time we see her, it only takes place over about 48 hours. You can't live on that much in 48 hours.
Yeah, okay. But then they were apart for a long time.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And that first meeting when they haven't seen each other for a long time, she's glowing and I'm like, oh, come on,
Well,
I think she's great. I really like Karen Allen in it. I think she's fantastic. But
I like Karen Allen, yeah. No, but I believed it because I thought she knew him before he became the really cynical guy, and she saw that transition, and I think she saw the lost little boy inside him.
Yeah.
And that would be how I would read that character.
Yeah, and I see that as well. I see that. But one character which absolutely annoyed me to no end
Go on.
was Bobcat.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, every scene he was in was just awful.
Oh, I didn't mind him up front when he was mild-mannered.
But to play what's meant to be like a straighter character, forget about it. No, he annoyed me in every scene he did.
See, I liked other things running through it. I liked the poor beleaguered censor who keeps getting more and more damaged by things falling on her and so on. I like Robert Mitchum's character.
Yeah, poor old Robert Mitchum in this film.
It's a funny film for him to be in.
It really is.
But he was just off-centre, deliberately off-centre.
Yeah, he was.
And he'd go on about, how cats like watching TV and what about a TV show where a cop dangles a piece of string and so on.
Yeah, no, that was fine.
The competitor, was it Bryce, the guy who's trying to take his job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, why?
Well, I can understand that, that in the narrative they're doing this thing where Bill Murray's character feels under pressure, but he was just a bit too smarmy and kind of came and went a bit. So, look, I wasn't wrapped in it either. What about, come on, the ghosts?
The ghosts, okay. I really liked Marley, or Haywood's ghost.
So the boss.
The boss.
Yep.
I really liked his ghost. I love the effects shot, when he put Bill Murray through the window.
Yes.
I thought that was really great. I thought that's really okay. I thought that's 88, but it looked really quite good even for now. And I love the first, the Ghost of Christmas Past, played by David Johansen.
Oh, the taxi driver.
The taxi driver. But that scene where he visits the family home and starts crying, I didn't feel a thing. In fact, I thought he was going to laugh. And I thought he was going to be really sarcastic at that moment. But it's meant to be quite an emotive moment. But I thought, no.
Yeah, when you talk about the believability of the characters, the bit I can't work out is Bill Murray and his brother, who's actually played by his real-life brother.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, there's 3 or 4 of them in the film. I don't know which Murray it was, but this is his real-life brother. And so we get taken back to the home. We see the completely unfeeling father who gives his son, drops a piece of veal at his feet while he's watching TV. And the mother's there, and who's heavily pregnant at that stage with, to have the brother. And she's loving and so on. Bill Murray comes out of that home completely, unencumbered with Christmas and idealism and whatever else. And yet the brother's really into it. And it's like, they don't feel like, if it had been an old family friend or something, they came out of the same home, I didn't believe that.
No. Well, look, the ghost of Christmas Present.
The fairy.
The
brutal fairy.
Oh, another one.
You didn't like her?
No, she annoyed me as well. It's this sort of sadistic fairy. No.
Yeah, but
the whole hitting thing,
the
whole hitting him all the time just went on for way too long. It was funny for like a chuckle for a couple of seconds, but then she annoyed me.
Well, her performance was so full on. You know the scene when she grabs his lip and kind of waggles it out? She actually tore his lip. She was so into the part, and felt dreadful afterwards.
Well, I think that says a lot. I think she was way too into the part.
I'm sorry, I like her character.
Obviously, the Ghost of Christmas Future was as you would expect, as it always is, as the Grim Reaper, But but I always loved those moments. But the one scene with the coffin, when he says, "I want to live," and then he appreciates it all, just made me cringe so much.
Oh.
And I really should be feeling something there. I really should. And I know it's meant to be a comedy, and I know we're meant to be sort of having fun with Bill Murray, and I love Bill Murray. The thing is, I think it's the script as well. Because the Ghostbusters, when you watch that and you hear the lines delivered in that, it's still very funny and delivered sharply and delivered so well. Directed by Ivan Reitman, it's a very well-made comedy film. Whereas this one, I think it doesn't know really what it wants to be. There were a few chuckles here, but nowhere near enough. Frank's speech at the end really doesn't work. Now, I know this is like a favourite for some people, but not for me. A Christmas film should give you a good Christmassy feeling, but close to Christmas, but this didn't, unfortunately.
Well, see, I did have that Christmassy feeling at the end, both when I first saw it and when I watched it again just recently. Look, I agree, the speech at the end, it's odd. Maybe he should have stayed on script. I think it says some wonderful things in that little speech, about, Christmas. He says we act a little nicer, we smile a little easier, and the one I like is we are the people we hope we would be. And I think that's actually part of the kernel of Christmas, is put aside religion and whatever else around that, and put aside, rampant consumerism and so on. But I think at the heart of Christmas in modern society is that it reminds us of being Christmassy in that sense of being aware of others, giving to charity, and actually moving it hopefully a little bit closer to the kind of people we actually want to be in that
agree.
hail fellow well met kind of way. There were bits in that final scene that did move me when he flicks to the brother and says, it's the SS Minnow from Gilligan's Island. I like that, and I know I'm set up to do it, but I love the bit where the Tiny Tim character, the little boy Calvin, does say, "God bless us, everyone."
Yeah.
And I love the fact that it ends in a sing-along, that community sing-along. So
there are moments. Look, I'm probably looking like I really hated the movie. It's
Scrooge.
Yeah. I didn't hate it. I just thought it was going to be better, and I expected a bit more from it.
And so your score?
I'm giving it a 5 out of 10.
Okay. I'm kind of tossing between 7 and 8, but I think I'll go for a 7.
Okay.
Okay, so now that we've totally demolished my sugar plum visions for my Christmas film, let's talk about Ricardo's. So, Ricardo, tell me about this film called Bad Santa.
Bad Santa is a black comedy. A brilliant Billy Bob Thornton plays the bitter and twisted Willie T. Stokes, who, with his partner, a very funny Tony Cox, get together once every year posing as a shopping centre Santa and his elf. They do this to rob shopping centre outlets on Christmas Eve. Willie, however, this year is having a meltdown. An alcoholic, his depressive and erratic behaviour draws suspicion from the shopping centre staff and security, the late Bernie Mac and the late John Ritter in his final screen role. But when Willie finds a sexy Santa fan, Lauren Graham, and befriends a small boy, Brett Kelly, it brings out his nicer side. He begins to learn that there is still a chance of happiness for him. Directed by Terry Zwigoff and written by Glenn Ficarra and John Urekwa, This may be a crude and vulgar Christmas film, but is also a clever, well-written comedy with a little heart. Greg, what did you think of Bad Santa?
I think this film raises a very interesting moral question. And that question is, when someone really loves a film and they want to share it with you and you really don't like it, what do you say? Now, this is a moral question that, based on the last few minutes, you have absolutely no problems with. But, look, I didn't like it. I really, really didn't like it. And I'm going to say why, and then I'm going to tell you that my opinion changed a bit after watching it and when I thought about it. But no, you say this is a black comedy. I find this just to be a very black or bleak film. Unremittingly grim. I wasn't laughing at all. I do not like films where it's supposed to be funny, but they swear creatively and repetitively.
But the swearing...
I found the dwarf character completely unfunny. The racial stereotype girlfriend, who I was shocked afterwards to learn, I think was one of the main actors from the Joy Luck Club, which I really like.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah, she reminded me of the character of the wife in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert,
yes,
the Asian wife character there. Every now and then it would do something where it would kind of perk up my attention when the boy first arrives at the shopping centre, and you know he is important to the story. Mm-hmm. And so I'm waiting.
What a good performance from him. I mean, he was.
Well, I don't know.
Such an odd.
Until I see him in something else, I don't know if that's what he's really like.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He's so odd. It's such a.
I loathe films that have lots of swearing and I'm going to say I'm really old-fashioned here. Foul-mouthedness in front of child actors. Mm-hmm. I find that so off-putting. I can't divorce myself from the story at that point because I'm thinking, I just think that's really inappropriate.
I don't think swearing was just for swearing's sake in this movie.
I think it was.
I don't think so. I think this was actually it made it funny. I understand.
Did not make it funny.
I understand when comedians, you know, their jokes aren't working on stage or whatnot. They have to put in an F word or they have to put in a swear word. To try and get the audience to laugh. But this is not like that. This is actually smarter than that.
No, I thought it was crass. I thought Cloris Leachman was wasted in the role as the grandmother because she's a great actress and she had nothing really to do there except sort of
don't make sandwiches.
Often make sandwiches or go to sleep and pretend to be dead for a moment. I thought Lauren Graham, is it, who plays the bartender?
Sexy Santa fan.
Fans probably understating it. She really loves Santa. And when I say loves Santa, I mean loves Santa. I liked her. You know, I thought, you know, it was kind of, you know, almost the stereotype of the hooker with a heart of gold kind of character. Mm-hmm. So I liked her performance.
She's glowing in it. She glows every time she's on screen in that role.
Yes, and I agree with that. I did think that Billy Bob Thornton gave a very good performance, but I wasn't interested in the character he was portraying. So I can see that he acted very well. But I just didn't enjoy the story.
I think he's brilliant. I think his comic time, I think he's absolutely brilliant in that role.
I thought the Bernie Mac character, who was the store security, the John Ritter character, who was the worried manager, I think that was actually his last film.
It was, yeah.
Which I think is a great shame, but anyway. Like, his character, you know, he's a bit worried about things, and he's obviously sacked the previous Santa to save money, even though he's saying he's not. And he's obviously a bit of a wishy-washy character. But he's there to raise the concerns of the security chief, and then he kind of just disappears from the story.
He does, yeah.
Bernie Mac is the security chief who kind of tumbles to things, and then he's and tries to blackmail them, then one of them gets rid of them, and he's out of the story. You know, where's the body? What's happened to that? You know, it just felt like things were being slotted in. But there were a couple of moments I liked. The one bit where I laughed was when they took the stockings off the sleeping grandmother and hung them up in front of the chimney. Okay. So look,
you didn't laugh when they were boxing and
no. Kick the chapper in the groin. They fall over screaming. You talk about Scrooge dating. Sorry, that was the 70s for me.
It's basic slapstick comedy. It's funny. Oh, look, I couldn't help but laugh.
If we kind of leap ahead a bit. And if you were to ask me what I would have scored the film as soon as I saw it, you know, just after watching it, what's our lowest score? Is it 0 or 1? It's 1, isn't it?
We haven't had... Yes, it is the 1.
It's a 1. I would have given it a 1. Mm-hmm. But when I walked away from it and thought about it some more, I mean, I did think that Billy Bob Thornton and Lauren Graham were very good. The kid, I can't decide because I think I need to see him something else. And he hasn't done much since from what I can tell.
I thought... You know, I think it very much plays like a Scrooge sort of film as well in this, because he starts off as very grouchy and he ends up quite, he's in a better place at the very end. I thought his journey was much better than
Billy Bob Thornton is more convincing than Bill Murray. Absolutely, I'll give you that.
In that journey. It ends with a fair bit of heart to it.
Well, and I agree, and that's partly why I changed my mind when I sort of went away and thought about it. I think there's actually a much better film that could have come out of that project. I think if they dialed down the crassness and the kicking and the groin kind of stuff, and I think if some of the character interactions actually could have been, I think, funnier, a bit more observational or something, little touches I just didn't feel were there. But the story about, this guy who's completely ruined his life, is an alcoholic and whatever else, and, is engaged in quite meaningless and I think joyless sex, beyond the moment, until he meets the bartender. A hollow character who, without meaning to, and perhaps wanting to without quite realising, builds community, taps into this idea of Christmas and, the better angels of our nature, and really tries to deliver the pink elephant while being shot by the police to the boy. I think there is a story in there, but everything around it and the execution just left me absolutely cold.
No.
And I watched this with my wife, and about halfway through she said, "This is really, really bad, but I can't take my eyes off it because it's so bad." And I felt pretty much the same. I'm sorry.
I love it that it goes quite far in its, it's a real antidote to the lovely Christmas film, right? And to the Christmas spirit, really. And it is vulgar. Yes, it is. It's
I don't mind vulgar. It was crass, and it just unremittingly so, and it just overwhelmed the film for me.
So what are you going to give it now?
I'm going to give it a 4.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm sort of 3-4, but for me, 1 to 3 means it's a really poor film, and I kind of teeter on that. But because I went away and thought about it afterwards and got beyond what you obviously find funny, I just don't.
Yeah.
With a couple of little exceptions, going away and thinking about the story that I think it was trying to tell, and told in part, raised my estimation, but it's still, it's a fail for me.
Oh, I give it a 7.
Right.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. Well, I just think I think the comedy is funny. I think the screenplay is actually really good. I think it's a very smart and very tight screenplay. I know comedy is very hard to write, and it's very difficult. I think everything was thought out very well in this movie, and I thought it was really well directed by Terry Zwigoff. I think he got the performances right. And what they should have been in there. I think there's a lot right in this movie, and I think it was very well structured and very well planned.
So let's go back to one of the themes, or the central theme of our podcast, which is filmmaker, film watcher. You're a filmmaker. What would you have done differently to that to push it up beyond 7?
I think it's a 7 film. I don't think it's meant to be a classic. I don't think it's meant to be an 8 or a 9 or a 10. I think it's meant to be a 7. I think it's meant to be at that level. I don't think every film needs to be a classic. I think every film should serve its purpose in what it wants to do, and that's to entertain an audience. Yeah, in terms of, I don't think it's meant to be anything but that. I don't think it's meant to be a classic. Okay, so the next film we will talk about is... I can't wait to talk about this. It's A Wonderful Life. Greg, tell us about it.
George Bailey, James Stewart, has been a good man throughout his life. As a child and as a man, he has suffered and steered his life away from his dreams to do the right thing by the people around him. In his middle years as a family man and head of the local community bank, George now faces his greatest crisis, and it's too much for him. The first half of this film is in flashback, as George's life story is told to a novice guardian angel, Clarence, played by Henry Travers. Clarence is briefed for his mission in response to the prayers of those who love George, to save him from desperation as he contemplates suicide as the way out of his crisis. The second half of the film is Clarence's intervention, showing George the grim world that would result if he were granted his wish to have never been born. George learns that his life has indeed been wonderful, making the world a better place than he could ever have imagined. This sentimental fantasy has become an often copied classic because of its timeless and hope-filled message, that we all have the ability to make a better world through our daily living, even though we may not see the consequences of our lives. In this respect, Frank Capra's 1946 film is very much of its time, joining contemporary films in exhorting a war-weary audience to co-create a better community. Works such as A Matter of Life and Death in 1946, Rashomon, that we will talk about, 1950, and even An Inspector Calls, which was filmed in 1954, but first performed on the London stage in 1946. Ricardo, I've seen this film many times. You hadn't seen it before, had you?
I'd never seen this film at all.
And?
Life-affirming, funny, charming, sad, reflective. This film had it all. What a grand film this is.
Yay!
It is really, it's in my top 5 films I've ever seen. It moved me from the first frame to the end. I loved this movie. What a wonderful movie.
And I say yay, I'm being a bit flippant, but really, it's interesting. I think I've said to you in the past that my favourite film is probably Vertigo. And Vertigo is certainly right up there, and in kids' films for me it's Mary Poppins. But when I sat down to watch this again, I thought, you know what? I think this is it. I think this is my favourite film. I agree with you. This time around, I noticed that a few little flaws in it, but, I cry every time at the end of the film. And I know I'm going to cry. And there are other films I've watched where I know I'm going to cry, like Steel Magnolias, but even as I'm crying, I almost resent it because I feel like I'm being set up for that. This, to me, is just a natural culmination of this quite long film, 2 hours, 10 minutes, where you really, really get to know George. They take their time telling his story, and then everything is bad. Stuart does such a career-making performance where he's young and enthusiastic. Mm-hmm. He's dedicated, concerned. He has dreams. He fights against things that get in the way of the dreams, including falling in love with his wife to be. And then you absolutely believe him when he's at the point of desperation, when he goes home and he knows everything's falling apart. He yells at his kids. He feels bad about the fact he's behaving so badly, and then he goes out. And you wonder what's going to happen. And then when he's just crying, or certainly, he's filled with the spirit of everything, that life is wonderful, even if he's going to go to jail.
His character has
and you just believe it all the way through.
Has a great arc.
Oh, yes.
From the beginning to the end. Now, I loved the film even from the opening titles in the book.
Yep.
I thought they were really beautifully done. But then even the opening voiceover was already emotional. I was already emotional over that. Even when they were talking about George Bailey, over the shots of the neighbourhood and the snow, and then the universe. It goes up into the universe and God and Joseph and bringing in the star.
Well, it's not God. Do you know who it is?
Who is it?
It's Benjamin Franklin. The character in the early versions of the scripts. The character is. I'm not sure what's in the credit, but the character is referred to as Franklin, but originally it was Ben Franklin.
Oh, right.
Which,
that's interesting.
In Americana is very, almost godlike.
Almost
certainly highly philanthropic.
Yeah, and I thought that was really fantastic. In all the effects and everything you've got these days, I can imagine how they would do that scene these days, with a few effects.
It has been remade.
Well, I've never seen a remake.
No, I just stumbled across it when I was just doing a bit of reading. Right. I'll come back to that.
Yeah, but all that is just the shots of the sky of these little bits flashing, and it works as they talk. It works so well, and I was captivated from the opening. And then the flashback to the young life of George Bailey is fantastic. The kids, they're great actors.
Yes.
They handle the script, a very, very great script, really well.
That script had a lot of writers working on it, coming and going, including Dorothy Parker.
Oh, right.
But I almost agree with you about the children. Zazu, the one, Daddy, every time the bell rings, I find her ever so slightly grating. Mm-hmm. But the other 3 kids... Yeah, they're just realms away from that Hollywood child actor.
Really amazing.
They felt real.
Yeah, they really did. And the girls, I love the girls in the shop there.
when they're young.
Yeah, when they're young, they're fantastic.
George Bailey, I'm going to marry you.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're brilliant. But even the man who's lost his boy to the flu,
Mr. Gower, the pharmacist.
Mr. Gower, and George saving him. It sets up.
He gets whacked across the ear.
Yeah, you see the blood coming out of his ear.
And Mr. Gower suddenly realising what he's done when George finally managed to say to him, you were going to dispense poison. I don't think there's a jarring moment.
No, there's not.
Look, it's perfect. There's little nuances all the way through, like George fiddling with the gate when he, at Mary's house when he goes to visit her.
Lovely moments in there. Well, I love James Stewart. He can handle comedy and drama very well.
In the same thing.
When he's young, and they've just had that great pool scene where they're dancing, and then the pool, the floor opens up in the pool. What a fantastic scene! It was really great. And then afterwards, when they're they're walking home from it, and she's got the robe on.
Yep.
And they're standing by the rose bush, and she loses the robe
And hides in the bush.
Hides
and
in
the
the
bush shakes as she speaks. Absolutely.
And he's sitting there going, "Well, I've never
It's an
been in
unusual
this
situation. And then all of a sudden, he gets the news his father's on his deathbed.
Yes, yeah.
Unexpectedly. And I really tuned in this time, too, to the performance of the parents. And the dad, who's not in the film very long, but just comes across as a thoroughly decent guy. And you understand where George came from.
Well, the chat to his father before he goes, before he's going to go,
And gets to tell him, "You're a great guy, Dad."
Yeah, it was a really lovely scene.
I agree.
And but I really felt for this character. I didn't know much about
George.
it. Yeah,
Yep.
I didn't know much about this movie, but when I actually downloaded the on iTunes the movie, and it was the black and white version. So I saw the black. I know they've done it in color,
Which is what I watched this time around. Yeah,
and I'd never seen it in color because I'd never seen the film before. But the black and white version I watched. But I'd read the little synopsis,
Yep.
and it said something about this character is going to suicide. And I thought, oh, okay, so that sort of set me up a little bit, and I went, okay, then this character is going to be like this. And then so when it started, I already had that in my mind, so about George Bailey, so I was already feeling emotional about that. But there's that one shot when the gods are talking, and they pause and they freeze frame on George as,
buying the suitcase.
Yeah, full of life. He's such a good man that
Yes.
thought about everybody but himself. And so every time he kept getting knocked back, he wanted to leave. Then his father died. He does a great speech to Mr. Potter on the board, which was a great scene.
Yes.
He shows his acting chops there, Mr. Stewart. Which they give him an ultimatum, pretty much, and say, we will not. Mr. Potter won't close us down if you take over.
What do you think of Mr. Potter in the film?
Oh, he's just his greed, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Greed and I think misery personified.
Yeah.
Great performance by Lionel Barrymore.
Very
in
good.
That part.
Yeah, very good.
Again, reading around the film this time through, this film was under suspicion as a communist piece of propaganda because of the betrayal of the banker. He was the man who was, the bastion of the financial establishment. Who is portrayed in such a negative light. But we've obviously moved on since the 50s, hopefully. But the character, I mean, as well as being the bad guy and the antagonist, I guess, in the narrative, to say that because he's such a bad, unlikable character means the film's anti-capitalism is wrong, because you've got George himself, who is a capitalist, he uses the market and so on.
Yes.
He's not making a lot of money out of it, but he's certainly doing that through industry and that kind of system. But even more, the childhood friend, Sam Heehaw, whatever his name is, he is very much part of capitalism. He's made an absolute fortune out of it. Brought the factory to town, so he's done some good as well, and really comes in to back up his friend George at the end. In some ways, maybe George is the complete polar opposite of Potter, but Sam's the opposite as well. So to kind of focus on Potter and say, well, so therefore this is an anti-capitalist film, so it must be communist, to me is just really short-sighted.
The scene where Potter is offering him...
He's tempting him. It's the temptation of Satan.
That's right. I was sitting there going... Yeah, part of me was... Because I was really feeling for George. He just really wasn't getting really what he wanted. Even with his engagement, he they were going away. Then suddenly, there's the great crash of 29, and so they don't go away, and he has to use all the money for the holiday on paying people and giving people some money. So I was thinking to myself, you know what? Take it. Take it. Think about yourself for once here.
And your family.
And your family.
But even in that scene, at the start of the scene, there's that lovely little, comic touches from Jimmy Stewart when he's in the chair, which is too low down, and he kind of, he sits down and realises he's low down. And, all the time when there's the serious stuff going on, there's still little funny bits in there.
I think there's so much. There's 3 dimensions in this movie.
I was really
so many moments.
I was really attuned this time to some of the shots that there were times I was really aware that all Capra was doing was having a good sort of medium to close shot of one or two actors and just letting them act, and the nuances there. So, when grown-up Mary first sees George at the dance before the swimming pool, floor opens up and so on, and she's just looking at him, and she's kind of radiating.
Yeah, there's that one shot,
childhood love. You know she's the little girl from the start, and you just believe it.
And he just lingers on it. You're right.
Or that moment when George is, in the office. Yeah, and the one you just mentioned, where he's trying to decide, should I go and let it all fall apart, or should I go back? And he's just standing there so irresolute, and he's right up the front of the camera shot, and then the staff are sort of behind him.
Well,
and it's just on him.
He walks into that shot. And then I think Capra just uses the close-up there and uses everything. I mean, every shot is for a purpose.
When Mary realises, towards the end of the first half, that something's seriously wrong, when George is angry at the kids and so on, and the camera's just on her and she's not saying anything, but you just see that she's processing this and thinking something's seriously bad here. It's just... And we talked about Scrooge just before and about Bill Murray in that film, and look, I think on balance you're right that Bill Murray, that might have been a better film if somebody else had taken that part.
Absolutely.
I cannot imagine anybody else in this part, but it was originally targeted for Cary Grant. And I think this would have been a really different film with Cary Grant. It would have been lighter and so on.
Yeah,
Stewart just
right.
brings that whole gamut and balance to it in a way I cannot conceive of anybody else in this part.
Oh, I can't either. I still think Cary Grant would have brought his own
He would have
charm
brought charm
to it.
absolutely.
Yes.
But I think it would have been a more lightweight fantasy film.
Yeah.
Whereas this really had that kind of, that gravitas and it just sucks you in emotionally.
It really
Charm
does.
can distance you. This really... You enter his world and you really care about him.
Now the third act really gets into a bit of Christmas Carol Scrooge territory when he goes through his past and he visits the past and the present and the future quite a bit, sees his brother's grave. He's obviously going to suicide just for money. Now, I don't think this is where I think the synopsises get it wrong. I don't think he wants to suicide. I don't think this is actually I don't think he comes to a point of I need to suicide. I think he comes to a point where he thinks I have to
Because of the money.
because of the money.
Life insurance policy.
That's very different to actually him coming to the conclusion that I want to kill myself. I think that's a very different
He sees
mindset.
it as the only way out, and he really picks up on what Potter said.
Out of a financial situation.
No, it's a sacrifice.
Yes, that's what it
is. And not
is.
just for his family, and not just for the bank, but also for Uncle Billy.
Yes.
I have to say, Uncle Billy, he's probably the bit that's not quite believable. He's just so divvy and incompetent. And the fact that they would let him take $8,000 in notes in an envelope to the streets to the bank.
Yeah, the whole
When he's got
money.
form.
Yes, yeah.
I found myself during the first half, 2/3 of the film, as you see his life story, you get a lot of the angels up front and the narrative about this happened when George was a boy, and then there was a long stretch of the film where I'd actually forgotten about the angels. Rather than, it would have been easy to have the voiceover come in and say, and then this happened, and then you see it and so on. We're actually trusted to follow the narrative ourselves. I thought that was very mature decision making, and all the way through that same kind of thought and care in the film. It really is an act of craftsmanship.
Yeah, it is.
This film didn't make its investment back at the box office originally. So it was made.
I didn't know that.
I'm not sure the numbers are right, but it was made for about something like 3.6 million. It made about 3.3 million at the box office. Apparently, when they were publicising it, it really focused on the love story of George and Mary, which is an important part of the story.
It is an important
but really missed what the film is really about, which is about sacrifice, about the fact that we have an impact on others, and even the fantasy element.
Absolutely.
And so I'm not surprised it did badly. But the reason it's become a classic is something went wrong in the 70s or 80s. There was a legal technicality where the film fell out of copyright. And so the US TV stations played it over and over and over again because it was free. It was cheap filler, particularly at Christmas.
Right. Okay.
And it became an annual event in families. And it really only took off, somewhere around the 80s. And the lovely thing about that was that Capra and Jimmy Stewart got to see that happen.
Wow. Okay.
And Capra and Stewart and Donna Reed, who plays the wife Mary, all said that this was the favourite film that they all had made, individually. It really is something which was almost, it could have been lost, and through this kind of bizarre set of circumstances really got rediscovered.
Yeah, that's really
But where I first encountered it? I'd never heard of it until sort of the mid-80s. But at the start of the first Back to the Future film, Marty McFly, the Michael J. Fox character, I think it's his film, was up in his room, and he's watching on his TV the scene where Jimmy Stewart has come back from this fantastical world where he was never born, and he's running down the street with, extreme gratitude and yelling out, hello such and such, and hello lamppost, whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
That scene was in the film, and I think, that film actually is almost a Spielbergian film in some ways as well. It really is. There's a fantasy element, but it's all about family and.
But this is where I think it beautifully goes between your fantasy and reality and drama and comedy, and it does it seamlessly. Whereas like how I was saying with Scrooge before, I just sort of didn't know what the film didn't really know what it wanted to be. This film knows exactly what it's going to be and does everything so thought out and so well. I could not fault this movie.
Did you like Clarence?
I loved Clarence. I love the angel character, but I'm a sucker for angel characters. I mean, one of my favourite films is Wings of Desire, which you haven't seen, I don't think.
I have. No, I have.
You have seen
a long time ago. But
it's
yes.
a Wim Wenders film of two angels. I mean, I love those sort of characters. I like when films go there.
Yeah, so do I.
It's a flawless film to me. I'm ready to give my score if you're ready to give yours.
Well, mine's a 10. This is just, right there.
I'm a 10 as well.
It really steps beyond itself or its genre, because there are a lot of those kind of fantasy films around then, and a lot of them I really liked, like Here Comes Mr. Jordan and Matter of Life and Death. But this really has that whole added, not only the execution and Stewart's performance all the way through, but the way it ends on that moment where finally he gets paid back for all the good he does.
Yes.
Everyone rallies around him.
Yeah.
That kind of moment, that kind of real community gathering around him, to me,
could have been done so badly.
It's an absolute thing of beauty.
But because you follow that character so much through the whole entire journey.
Yeah.
When everybody's coming around him and you see, George Bailey sitting there with all this appreciation, it's very moving. If you haven't seen this film, just do it. Just go out and
you'll find it
get
really cheap on DVD or on Apple or whatever.
Just do it. It really is. And look, I saw it on black and white firstly, so black and white or colour.
No, go black and white.
Yeah.
But it to sort of borrow the film's title, it's a wonderful film. It really is.
Yeah, definitely see it. Definitely see it. So that's our Christmas special here at Filmmaker Film Watcher. We'd just like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a very safe and happy New Year.
Whether there's 2 of you out there or 1,000, we've got no idea.
No idea.
But we love the fact that you might be listening.
Absolutely. So Merry Christmas and
I brought a treat. I brought a Christmas cracker.
Yeah.
That we can open. So grab your little.
I'll grab my
thing.
little okay. We'll hopefully hear the crack on the microphone.
And Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas.
Ready? Go.
No, I missed that one there. Okay, let's try again.
Right.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Oh, there's no pop to that, is there? Now, let me try it. You ready?
Hey!
That's pathetic.